Good afternoon, good evening, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. As you have just seen through the video, I welcome you to the Regional Symposium, where we'll discuss effective, inclusive, and accountable public institutions and digital government transformation for resilient recovery and the SDG implementation. My name is Bo-Gyun Shim, head of the United Nations Project Office on Governance, which is a part of the Division for Public Institutions and Digital Government of UNDESA. This is the fourth regional symposium, yet the first regional symposium being held virtually. Although we cannot meet physically in person, we'd like to make sure that this is an engaging and lively event. Participants will have the opportunity to ask questions through the Q&A function in Zoom and also on the Facebook on comments box. The symposium is being recorded and live streamed on Facebook. I would like to mention that as of today, we have over 450 registered participants from over 70 countries that are connected. We have a very rich agenda and a group of high-level and excellent speakers. With this, I'm now delighted to open the regional symposium. It is with great honor to introduce His Excellency, Mr. Jin Young. He is the Minister of the Interior and Safety of the Republic of Korea, who will deliver opening remarks. Mr. Jin could not attend in person due to conflict of schedule. Therefore, he will deliver a pre-recorded message.
A very good morning to all from India. Next. Given the title of this session, and as a second member, I start recording this
2020년 아시아 태평양 지역 지속가능 개발 목표 온라인 심포지움에 참여하고 계신 모든 분들을 진심으로 환영합니다. 반기문 제8대 유엔 사무총장님, 유엔 경제사회처 류전민 사무차장님, 박남춘 인천광역시장님, 유엔 거버넌스 센터 신보균 원장님을 비롯해 뜻깊은 행사를 함께 준비해 주신 분들께도 진심으로 감사드립니다. 또한 코비드-19 팬데믹에 대응하기 위한 많은 분들의 헌신과 노력에 깊은 존경의 마음을 전합니다. 올해로 4회를 맞는 지속가능 개발 목표 심포지움은 아시아 태평양 지역의 공공행정과 지속가능한 발전 방안을 논의하는 공공 거버넌스 분야의 주요 행사로 성장해 왔습니다. 특히 올해는 코비드-19에 대응하며 국가 간의 연대와 협력 그리고 공공행정의 중요성이 강조되고 있습니다. SDG 이행 및 탄력적 회복을 위한 공공행정 혁신과 디지털 정부의 역할을 주제로 진행되는 이번 심포지엄에서 각국의 혁신적인 사례들이 심도 있게 공유되고 코비드-19 대응과 지속가능 개발 목표 이행 방안에 대한 활발한 논의가 이루어지길 기대합니다. 대한민국 정부도 그간의 공공행정 발전 경험과 성과를 토대로 포용적인 디지털 정부로의 전환을 적극 추진하고 전 세계의 지속가능 발전에 기여할 수 있도록 노력하겠습니다. 코비드-19을 조속히 종식하고 일상으로 복귀하여 여러분과 직접 만나 더 깊은 대화를 나눌 수 있기를 바랍니다. 감사합니다.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Jin for his encouraging remarks. We deeply appreciate the Republic of Korea's partnership with the United Nations. Now I have the great honor and the pleasure to introduce Mr. Liu Jian-min. He is the Undersecretary General for Economic Development and Chief Economist of UNDESA, who will deliver the opening remarks. Undersecretary General, Mr. Liu, you have the floor. You are muted. You are muted.
Your Excellency, Mr. Jin Young, Minister of Interior and Safety of the Republic of Korea, Your Honorable Mr. Ban Ki-moon, former Secretary General of the United Nations, Honorable Nan Chun-pak, Mayor of Incheon Metropolitan City, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. It is my great honor to welcome you all to the Regional Symposium on Effective, Inclusive, Accountable Public Institutions and Digital Government Transformation for Resilient Recovery and the Implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. I wish to express my deep appreciation to the Ministry of Interior and Safety of Republic of Korea and to the Incheon Metropolitan City for their continued support to this annual event. The symposium has become a flagship activity of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, organized by the United Nations Project Office on Governance, the UNPOG. Since 2017, the symposium has provided an invaluable platform to countries in the Asia-Pacific region to exchange knowledge on how to strengthen the capacity of public institutions and promote innovation to advance the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Excellencies, this year has been extremely challenging with the COVID-19 pandemic impacting our societies to their core. In some instances, the pandemic has exposed institutional weakness and government's difficulties in limiting its negative impact. Still, in many others, it has underscored our strong will to adapt through innovation, perseverance, and the commitment to working together through partnerships. However, we still face a pandemic whose full impact is unknown. As we emerge from this crisis, governments have the opportunity to accelerate actions to make institutions more effective, inclusive, and accountable. In doing so, it is critical that the governments could overcome policy silos, strengthen institutional coordination across sectors, engage key stakeholders, and coordinate actions at all levels. This is key to mainstreaming risk-informed governance strategies for a more sustainable and resilient recovery. In recovering better, it is essential to focus on the most vulnerable populations who have been severely impacted by this crisis. They require the full support of government institutions working in partnership with the private sector and civil society organizations. Indeed, solidarity is critical if we are to build more equitable societies that could leave no one behind. It is also important that countries leverage new approaches and innovation, including through the use of ICTs. Digital government has played a significant role in responding to the pandemic. It has allowed governments to gather timely information, disseminate prompt updates, and engage all stakeholders in managing the pandemic. Several countries in Asia and the Pacific have been successful in curbing the pandemic by using ICT tools and the digital government. Many good practices, innovative measures, and the lessons learned have emerged. ICT tools and the digital government will continue to be critical in the recovery processes and in building a resilient societies for all. However, more efforts are needed for genuine digital government in transformation. These include better digital access, investment in ICT infrastructure, agile digital policy of frameworks, comprehensive cybersecurity policies, and adequate digital literacy and skills. Digital inclusion not only requires that the public officials have sufficient digital skills, but also requires that vulnerable groups are equipped with the capabilities to access and use digital platforms. Improving accessibility and affordability is paramount to reducing the digital divide. Distinguished participants, the pandemic has put an incredible strain on our health care systems. But this is not all. It also affected public institutions' ability to manage this crisis in the areas of education, employment, food security, and poverty reduction. Furthermore, it is a major setback for the achievement of the SDGs. While many resources have been shifted towards containing the pandemic, we should think of recovery and SDG implementation as a holistic and interdependent process. Recovering from COVID-19 in a sustainable and resilient manner will require integrated whole of government and whole of society approaches. This is also true for accelerating SDG implementation. Sustainable and resilient recovery does not need to negate the effect and negate the effort of the SDG acceleration. It should be the catalyst for further change. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I'm confident that we can emerge stronger from this crisis if we all commit to do our part. Renewed energy to accelerate progress on SDGs is required today more than ever. Your insights, creativity, and expertise on how to promote effective, inclusive, and accountable institutions are critical for a more resilient recovery, where the focus is on people, planet, and prosperity. In conclusion, I would like to thank all colleagues for their hard work in organizing this regional symposium. I wish you have a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Undersecretary General, for the insightful remarks. You eloquently highlighted that sustainable and resilient recovery from COVID-19 should not negate the efforts of the SDG acceleration, but be a catalyst for further change. Let me also say thank you for being available so late in the evening in New York to open the symposium. We'd really appreciate it. I would now like to introduce Mr. Namchun Park. He is the mayor of Incheon Metropolitan City who will deliver his welcoming remarks through the pre-recorded video.
Good morning. I am Park Namchun, Mayor of Incheon Metropolitan City. First, I'd like to extend my greetings to Head of Office of UNPOG, Mr. Shin Bo-gyun, Under-Secretary General of DESA, Mr. Ryu Jae-min, Minister of the Interior and Safety, Mr. Jin Young, former UN Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, and all the participants from 27 countries committed to sustainable development of the Asia-Pacific region, as well as the whole planet. This symposium was supposed to be a platform where people get together and meet face-to-face, but the COVID-19 pandemic has made it move to online. With 3 million Incheon citizens, I am sincerely hoping for the time when people can meet in person without any concerns about infections and health. As we all know from the pandemic, these can affect people of all walks of life, but the impact is not shared equally. Especially the hardest hit economically are the less fortunate and the marginalized. So our mission is to ensure that there is no one behind left in our society. And to this end, the 17 SDGs was adopted at the 2015 UN General Assembly. Incheon City is doing its best to achieve the goals. We have established the Incheon New Deal for balanced urban development and decent job creation, secured the engine for future economic development, centering around the bio-industry, put keen attention to clean energies, including offshore wind power, and recently announced our will list to establish an environmentally friendly resource circulation system for a cleaner city, healthier life, and minimizing waste. Aside from that, Incheon is actively providing support for 15 international organizations, including UNPOG. We are going to listen to the suggestions and opinions produced in the symposium and reflect them in our effort to make progress with no one left behind, just like in the 2030 Development Agenda. Our cooperation and support for UNPOG will go on in pursuit of sustainable development for the international community as well. In closing my remarks, I hope for the days when the world is free from the virus and we can welcome you all in Incheon for more conversations. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Park for his wonderful welcoming remarks. Thank you for sharing the Incheon New Deal and the various efforts by Incheon City to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Next, may I have the great honor to invite His Excellency, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, the 8th Secretary General of the United Nations, to deliver his special address. Mr. Ban, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Shin Bo-kyun, Head of UN Project Office on Governance, for your warm introduction. Honorable Mr. Jin Young, Minister of Interior and Safety of the Republic of Korea, and of course, my good friend, Honorable Lee Jae-min, UN Under-Secretary General for Economic and Social Affairs at DESA, and Honorable Park Nam-chun, Mayor of Incheon Metropolitan City, for their very warm and strong commitment message. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to speak to you as part of today's opening session of the UN Symposium on Effective, Inclusive, and Accountable Public Institutions and Digital Government Transformation for Resilient Recovery and the Implementation of the SDGs. And it is my great privilege to deliver these remarks at such an important time as we strive to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, before their 2030 target date. I am still taking great pride in that these SDGs were adopted during my time in 2015. My sincere appreciation goes to the UN, the DESA, for extending an invitation for me to participate today. My gratitude also goes to the Korean Ministry of Interior and Safety, as well as Incheon Metropolitan City, for sending their strong message. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed today, we face a variety of converging crises and elevated global uncertainty. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to upend our economies, societies, and the way we live. At the same time, the climate crisis is deepening as temperatures surge, sea level rise, and wildfires burn. In this regard, there had never been a more important time to build capacities to mobilize, organize, and equip public institutions to build back better and greener and achieve the UN SDGs. As we collectively strive to build our societies back from the ongoing pandemic, I firmly believe that the Sustainable Development Goals can help us bring together this period of elevated uncertainty and simultaneously synergize our COVID-19 socio-economic recoveries. The SDGs offer a viable blueprint to rebuild our societies in a more sustainable, inclusive, and resilient manner from the pandemic. 5 years since their adoption, the SDGs have made tangible progress on bettering maternal mortality rates, ending poverty and hunger, and improving the quality of water and sanitation in many communities. But progress is uneven on others, and COVID-19, conflict, and climate change around the world, including in the Asia-Pacific region, are hindering and reversing SDG implementation. Against this backdrop, we need to move forward with a renewed sense of urgency and reinvigorated political will with only 10 years left to go. In this regard, it is critical to strengthen the capacities of governments at all levels to catalyze a whole of government and whole of society approaches in order to achieve the SDGs. While multi-stakeholder partnerships are also important in our quest to achieve the SDGs, the primary responsibility should fall on governmental institutions to spur enhanced action and engagement from the rest of society. That is why it is necessary to build on the Committee of Experts on Public Administration's 11 principles of effective governance for SDGs. Indeed, we need all public institutions, legislative, executive, and judicial, security, and others, incorporating these principles to help our chances of achieving the SDGs. At the same time, both national ownership and advancing digital transformation are essential to harness the full effectiveness of public institutions with a view toward SDG implementation as well as recovering from the pandemic. First, national ownership is a prerequisite to achieve the SDGs. In this regard, we must scale up the capacities of governments in Asia and all around the world so that they can mainstream the SDGs into key planning and policies. I believe this should be done at all levels, including the local and municipal levels. This will give us the best chance of success and help instill a strong sense of ownership, collaboration, and solidarity, both within and beyond the national borders and the cities. And second, we must do more to accelerate digital transformation to address both current and future shocks and fortify a greater resilience in the Asia and Pacific region and beyond. These include not only COVID-19 and climate change, but also future pandemics, conflicts, and economic crises. Over the next 10 years, progress in digital transformation, technology, and innovation will be essential in delivering on all the SDGs, from poverty eradication and food security to energy, water, and sanitation, and more. But in order to catalyze the digital transformation, we must also be mindful of the importance of bridging the digital divide. To do so, upper-income countries must elevate their effort to share best practice, build capacities, and help other governments at all levels acquire, utilize, and deliver the tools necessary to usher in this new era of sustainability. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 and other global crises such as climate change have underlined our fundamental interconnectedness. They have also made it clear that we need global solutions rooted in inclusivity and sustainability and centered on enhancing the health and resilience of all people, communities, and our planet in order to create the future we want. Over the next 3 days at this symposium, you all have an invaluable opportunity to help shape innovative best practices for public institutions to meet the transformational aspirations of the SDGs and deliver this future for all. This is one where no one is left behind. As such, let us raise the level of our ambition and sense of urgency and make further efforts to help public institutions realize this transformative vision for all people and our planet. And I thank you for all your attention and leadership, and let us work together to make this world better for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Ban, for those inspiring words. You highlighted that the SDGs offer a viable blueprint to rebuild our societies from the pandemic and underscored the importance of SDG implementation with a renewed sense of urgency. May I now have the floor to invite His Excellency Mr. Farhad Hossain, Minister of State, Ministry of Public Administration, People's Republic of Bangladesh, to deliver his keynote speech. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Bakyonshi. His Excellency, Mr. Chen Yang, Minister of Interior and Safety, Republic of Korea. His Excellency, Mr. Liu Jianming, Under Secretary General for UN DESA. His Excellency, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, 8th Secretary General of the UN. His Excellency, Mr. Namjoon Park, Mayor Incheon Metropolitan City. Distinguished participants, colleagues, and symposium organizers. Assalamu alaikum and good morning. At the outset, I would like to convey my greetings to all of you on the occasion of the centennial birth anniversary of the father of the nation of Bangladesh, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Also, I would like to express my sincere appreciation for inviting me to this very important and timely symposium on public institutions. Under the leadership of our great leader, the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and through the sacrifice of millions of people during the War of Liberation, Bangladesh emerged as an independent country in 1971. In the present day, Bangladesh, under the pragmatic leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, a parliamentary form of government, operates through a very dedicated public administration. It may be mentioned here that Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is also the Minister for the Ministry of Public Administration, which is primarily responsible for human resource development and management across the government. Ministry of Public Administration is also responsible for developing and maintaining institutional frameworks in the public sector. At this point, I would like to draw your attention to some of the most important efforts by my government in promoting an effective, inclusive, and accountable public service. Digital Bangladesh is now a reality. We aim to bring 60% of all government services over mobile phones, call center, text messaging, data, social media, apps, etc. 30% through digital centers within 5-kilometer radius of households, and 10% through traditional means by visiting office physically by 2021. A crucial component in terms of infrastructure is the National Information Portal, which has brought 42,000 government offices and more than 1,000 government forms under one umbrella. Digital centers have been developed at union level, the lowest tier of the government, to ensure institutional transparency, accountability, and efficiency. Performance management system through annual performance agreement have been introduced. For transparency and accountability in the financial sector, a medium-term budget framework has been introduced to measure results from the resources allocated by the government. National Integrity Strategy is also being implemented as a comprehensive set of goals. It will enhance accountability, efficiency, transparency, and effectiveness of public institutes. With the Right to Information Act 2009 and the National Information Commission, we have ensured public access to information and strengthened democratic governance. Citizens are now more aware of the available public services with the implementation of citizen charter at all tier or public sector. We have ensured our political commitment to SDGs through national development plans, such as the 20-year perspective plan, 5-year plan, and all development plans. These development plans and SDGs are thematically and functionally aligned. In order to resist the implication of the COVID-19 crisis, we have implemented community-based prevention practices, case identification, and ensured quarantine. To increase the capacity of the health service, since May 2020, Ministry of Public Administration has recruited 4,000 physicians in our national medical services. Since 25th March of this year, the fiscal and financial packages announced by the Honorable Prime Minister is equivalent to 3.7% of GDP, which is the largest in South Asia. Alongside health safety measures, government has widened social safety measures, food security, and continuity in our education system. Excellencies, Bangladesh is one of the world's rising economies. In the coming years, our grand priorities include achievement of middle income country status, substantial progress in Agenda 2030 in SDGs, becoming a developed nation by 2041, and progressing towards the Delta Plan 2100. At the end, I would like to emphasize that we live in a globalized world with the reality of one world, one future. In our contemporary public administration, we need to understand this, and we must strive towards building effective, inclusive, and accountable public institutions, as our performance in many instances is likely to have ramification beyond our national boundaries. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mr. Hossain, for the insightful keynote speech. Thank you for sharing Bangladesh's innovative approaches to SDG implementation and mitigating COVID-19. I would like to once again thank all the high-level speakers of the opening session for their insightful remarks. This concludes the opening session. Now we'll begin session 1. It is with great honor to introduce my colleague and the moderator of this session, Ms. Adriana Alberti. She is the Chief of the Program Management and Capacity Development Unit, Division for Public Institutions and Digital Government of DESA. Adriana, you have the floor.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all of you who have joined from across the region and the world. Welcome to session 1 on effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions to leave no one behind. The objective of this session is to emphasize the important role of effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions for well-coordinated responses and the containment of the socioeconomic impact of the pandemic on the most vulnerable groups. The session will highlight the cross-cutting roles of public institutions in recovering from the COVID-19 and advancing sustainable development. It will also provide an opportunity to discuss strategies and lessons learned on how to make institutions more effective, accountable, and inclusive to leave no one behind. Before we begin, please note that you can ask questions through the Q&A chat box. We will address some of your questions further after the presentations of the distinguished speakers. So we have with us a group of very distinguished experts, and therefore, without further ado, let me introduce our first panelist. Ms. Upma Chowdhury. She is member of the United Nations Committee of Experts on Public Administration. And I would like to ask the following question. The role of public institutions in sustainable development is essential. the United Nations Committee of Experts on Public Administration has discussed and provided recommendations on making public institutions more effective, inclusive, and accountable for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. So, Ms. Chowdhury, could you please share with us how the 11 principles of effective governance can help member states in achieving the SDGs and address the pandemic? Ms. Chowdhury, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Alberti. Namaste and a very good morning to all from India. Next, please. Next slide. Given the title of this session, and as a SEPA member, my starting point can only be Goal 16. Peace, justice, and strong institutions, emphasizing effective governance. To address the governance challenges associated with the implementation of the SDGs, SEPA 17 in 2018 agreed on a set of principles of effective governance. The structure of the SEPA framework is comprised in what I call the formula 3/11/62. The three essential elements of SDG 16, that is effectiveness, accountability, and inclusiveness, are at its core, followed by 11 basic principles of effective governance, as on the slide, and 62 strategies, each associated with one of the 11 principles. Next slide, please. There are indeed strong positive linkages between institutional building of Goal 16 and other SDGs, and that is because of two reasons. Firstly, it is widely accepted that strong, effective institutions enable the achievement of the SDGs. Where progress is lacking, weak institutions may be a significant factor. Secondly, goals are interrelated, and progress on one goal can affect the other. The Global SD Indicator Framework reveals that interlinkages with principles of effective governance are in general widespread. But, and unfortunately, public sector reforms continue to be a major and vexing challenge in many countries. Intosai and ECOSOC both confirm the need for addressing long-standing challenges for public institutions to reach the SDGs. Given above, how do the SEPA principles facilitate member states? Foremost, they help interested countries to build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. And as an initial reference point, as they provide reliable, action-oriented guidance. SEPA principles are based on a common understanding of the basic principles of effective governance. The full realization of SDGs depends on such an understanding. Member states are further facilitated by the uniqueness of the elements of these principles, as they are voluntary governance principles, non-technical, with phrasing based on common meaning of words. They apply to all public institutions. They are helpful as a guide to countries in all governance paradigms. The principles foster a contextualized governance approach with flexibility of adaptation. Importantly, SEPA principles spur countries to think about feasible reforms and to prioritize. Next slide, please. Most importantly, SEPA recognizes that the principles need to be relevant to useful people. They have been given depth through a selection of 62 commonly used strategies for operationalizing responsive and effective governance. As regards responding to COVID-19, the pandemic, good public governance is more important than ever. The SDG Report 2020 highlights that COVID-19 is disrupting implementation across the SDGs. The comeback of large governments in some parts is often in contradiction of Goal 16. The pandemic, hence, reinforces the need for SEPA principles. I quote from a blog by two SEPA members, Geraldine and Geert, quote, "Achieving SDG 16 would reduce the chances that future situations turn into crisis, and when such crises do occur, their impact will be mitigated due to strengthened institutional capacity to foresee and reduce risks, as well as respond quickly and effectively to emerging threats to public well-being," unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, SEPA continues in taking the work on principles to the next level through its members, the informal working group, and the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Chowdhury, for your insightful remarks, and thank you for highlighting the relevance of the 11 principles of effective governance for sustainable development and for better recovery from the pandemic. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Francesco Checchi, Anti-Corruption Advisor, UNODC, Southeast Asia and the Pacific. And we would like to address the following question. Transparency, accountability, and anti-corruption are important components of good governance. What can be done to strengthen accountability and prevent corruption in the context of COVID-19 response and recovery? Mr. Checchi, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Next slide, please. All right. Let me start by saying that corruption constitutes a major hindrance to sustainable development and to the achievement of the SDGs. There is one SDG in particular, number 16, that contains the objective to reduce corruption and enhance transparency and accountability of public institutions. The introduction of this specific SDG sends a clear message to the international community, identifying corruption as one of the main problems that has to be addressed in order to promote prosperity and well-being, especially of disadvantaged and excluded communities around the world. Corruption affects all citizens in developed and developing countries alike, hampering public services, making it difficult to access them, especially for the disadvantaged groups. Here, I present just a couple of points for reflection. Southeast Asia, actually the 8 countries in the figures, have lost $80.5 billion due to illicit financial outflow in less than a decade. And this is a conservative figure, as the flow are difficult to calculate. These are mostly proceeds of crime and corrupt money transferred abroad through a complex network of shell companies located in tax havens, providing anonymity for the transactions. In addition, it is estimated that in 2018 only, more than 1 billion of development assistance has been lost in Asia Pacific due to corruption. Another element I want to call your attention on is the fact that the region is losing foreign direct investments because of corruption. According to the World Bank, businesses find working in Asia Pacific particularly challenging, with a third of them declaring being asked for gifts when participating in tenders in the construction industries, more than in any other part of the world. Corruption also greatly contributes to insecurity and instability, facilitating transnational organized crime, including crimes such as human trafficking, illegal exploitation of natural resources, and drug trafficking, further affecting the most vulnerable in our societies. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to also highlight the fact that the COVID-19 crisis has exacerbated the corruption risks. The increase in public spending to face the crisis, especially on health and social services, coupled with the fact that in many cases, direct support has been provided to citizens and businesses in the form of cash, has created additional scope for corruption. Funds are often disbursed by local level authorities, and controls and oversight over the spending has been relaxed in order to speed up the delivery of the assistance so badly needed. The UNODC, Regional Office for Southeast Asia and the Pacific, conducted a study on the oversight of relief packages throughout Southeast Asia. And we found that in most countries, specialized anti-corruption agencies have not been consulted with regard to corruption risk mitigation measures to be put in place. These special agencies are also overwhelmed with work and often incapable of conducting meaningful investigation of the large number of alleged corruption and fraud cases. Civil society organizations have sounded the alarm, and they also have not been included in the conduction of oversight, with access to information generally being very limited in the region. The corruption cases recorded so far range from embezzlement of funds to procurement frauds to reselling of personal protective equipments and medicines on the black market. Next slide. So in order to address these issues, the UN Convention Against Corruption provides a roadmap, including a large number of measures ranging from prevention of criminalization and law enforcement to international cooperation for mutual legal assistance and extradition to asset recovery. The UN Convention Against Corruption has been equipped with a peer review mechanism whereby countries review each other with regard to the status of implementation and existing gaps and challenges. The reviews have identified a number of important gaps that are present in the majority of the countries of the region. Among these, I would highlight a few that, in my view, constitute the pillars of anti-corruption strategies that have to be developed, especially in this delicate moment. And these are enhancing prevention of corruption in the public administration, especially looking at public procurement, that we have seen is a major risk area, addressing conflict of interest between public functions and private activities or connections. Too many times public officials have been found in breach of conflict of interest rules, favoring businesses and the interests of their families or other associated persons, promoting access to information. There seems to be resistance to the idea of information fully accessible to the public in the region. Protecting whistleblowers. A large number of corruption cases are unveiled by whistleblowers, but these courageous individuals do not receive meaningful protection, unfortunately, in the majority of the countries of the region. Finally, enhancing law enforcement capacity to conduct financial investigation, especially looking at transparency of beneficial ownership, that is, knowing the ultimate owners of bank accounts utilized to transfer large sums of funds and the private business gaining access to public contracts. So this is it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keki, for your valuable insights on how to strengthen accountability and prevent corruption, particularly now in the context of COVID-19. Thank you very much. Now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Laisa Veretti. She is Director of Operations, Pacific Disability Forum. Ms. Veretti, we know that vulnerable groups are disproportionately affected by a crisis such as the COVID-19 pandemic. So what are, in your opinion, the measures public institutions can implement to make recovery more inclusive and rebuild, making the efforts to rebuild societies in a more resilient way so that no one is left behind? Ms. Veretti, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues, friends from Suva, Fiji. It is a great pleasure to join you all under the discussion of this very important topic. Maybe let me start by saying that with COVID at hand, the normal, which was before COVID, never did really work for the vulnerable group or for the most marginalized. And now with a new normal ushered in by COVID-19, what do we say that it's going to work for vulnerable group like persons with disabilities? However, if institutions are truly accountable, inclusive and effective, maybe then we'll have this hope of not being left behind in the face of recoveries and resilient rebuilding. Let me start by saying that for institutions to make recovery inclusive and rebuilding to be inclusive of vulnerable groups like persons with disabilities, specifically on social protection, I will start with removing barriers. The barriers at the policy level, barriers at the design level, and barriers at the implementation level. Just on social protection for vulnerable group like persons with disabilities. At the policy level, the systems and the schemes are more likely to be disability inclusive if the broader national environment is sensitive to disability. Then we can be sure that policy initiative and intervention will be inclusive in terms of social protection for persons with disabilities. At the implementation level, at the design level, requires that such mechanism to identify those who are eligible based on their disability. But then you have the different measurement to identification for persons with disabilities, a medical assessment, you go through a different kind of assessment, but if it does not really answer to the disability, to the basis of the disability, it fails us. And lastly, on the implementation, the barrier is through implementation. Accessibility is still a huge barrier to get to the assessment center. And if all goes well, accessing it, because I need to get to the post office, the postal office, or I need to get to the local bank, I need transportation that is accessible. So from policy to design to implementation, we still have huge barriers, which which hinders the inclusive recovery if you're looking at social protection. Also, social protection plays a key role in the face of the impact. Families who look after persons with disabilities have lost jobs, and those who, and the carers who have look after persons with disabilities lost jobs. So social protection is key and is vital to ensure that we have this, what we are calling as resilient building and inclusive recovery. And some of the measures, which is the next slide, please. What can institutions do? At the policy level, public institutions with the government ensure that economic recovery programs are inclusive for persons with disabilities and their families. Secondly, domestic financing, public financing, including international financing to protect and enhance a fiscal space for health and social protection. Thirdly, ensure that we would be able to scale up and coordinate delivery capacities of social protection, not only around COVID, but in any humanitarian crisis response program, whether it's COVID, whether it's a cyclone, whether it's typhoon. This has to be inclusive. Next slide, please. Ensuring that all public information is accessible. Crisis response measures, health and social protection intervention are inclusive and accessible. That's very important. And ensuring development and continuity in access to quality care and support, including through those who financial assistance and to those who provide services, specifically for persons with disabilities. And finally, removing any financial barriers to access health coverage or health care. For social protection, key for persons with disabilities, the minimum income, healthcare costs to be covered, and the extra cost to disability to be covered. One example of extra cost to disability, if I'm a woman sitting on the wheelchair, I pay extra cost, maybe because of public transportation is not accessible. So I take a taxi, my colleague takes a bus. I pay 5 times more my colleague doesn't. So this is very important, all these key points that I've highlighted, and hope it would inform our efforts around inclusive recovery and resilient building. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Veretti, for highlighting the critical importance of removing barriers to accessibility at the policy design and implementation levels. I now have the pleasure of introducing Ms. Hyung-hee Kim. She is the director of the Seongdong Health Center, 2020 UN Public Service Award winner from the Republic of Korea. Before posing a question to Ms. Kim, we will now play a video to introduce the initiative.
대한민국 서울 성동구 지역 주민의 건강을 적극적으로 관리하고 있습니다. 성동구는 노인 인구가 지속적으로 증가함에 따라 사회적 건강 돌봄의 필요성을 인식하고 의료 사각지대를 해소하기 위해 의사 4명, 17개 동별 전담 간호사 17명으로 구성된 효사랑 주치의팀이 도움이 필요한 가정에 직접 방문하여 보건복지와 의료 서비스를 함께 제공하고 있습니다. 효사랑 주치의는 75세 이상 노인 전체를 대상으로 민간과 공공기관, 주민이 협력하여 소외된 어르신들의 건강관리 능력을 향상시키며 건강 위해 요인을 개선했는데요. 더불어 어르신들이 집 밖으로 나와서 사회활동을 참여하는 등 삶의 질이 향상될 수 있도록 공공 서비스를 강화하고 있습니다.
항시 고맙게만 생각하고 내가 보고 싶을 때는 와주시니까 혼자 사니까 외로움은 많이 없어지고 있어요. 그 병원도 같이 가시고 그 약방에 약도 타러 주시고 그래서 이제 건강도 좋아지고 마음도 편해지고 그래서 항시 의사 선생님만 믿고 따르고 있습니다.
효사랑 주치의로서 75세 이상 어르신들을 집집마다 방문할 때 어르신들이 참 저희를 반가워하시고 또 언제 오는지 기다리고 계십니다. 전화를 드리면 아침부터 문 열고 기다리고 계시고요. 병원에서만 봤을 때는 파악되지 않았던 그런 건강에 나빴던 부분들이 저희가 그 어르신들의 삶에 들어가서 무엇을 먹고 어느 공간을 사시고 무슨 생각을 하시는지 또 경제적 상황 어떤지를 한꺼번에 같이 고민을 하면서 할머니, 할아버지들의 건강을 챙겨드릴 때 훨씬 더 효과가 있고 그리고 건강이 나아지는 것을 저희가 보면서 함께 감동하고 함께 웃는 일이 참 많습니다. 이 사업이 계속 정착되어서 많은 어르신들이 행복하면 좋겠습니다.
안녕하세요. 서울 성동구청장 정원호입니다. UN 공공행정상이라는 뜻깊은 상을 수상하여 193개 UN 회원국에 성동구라는 대한민국의 지방정부의 이름을 알릴 수 있는 영광스러운 기회를 갖게 되어 정말 기쁩니다. 성동구는 스마트 도시를 구정 비전으로 4차 산업혁명의 스마트한 기술을 통해 주민의 삶의 질을 높이고 누구도 소외되지 않는 포용도시 정책을 추진하고 있습니다. 효사랑 주치의 제도는 성동형 의료복지 시스템의 대표적인 정책으로 어르신들의 의료 사각지대를 해소하고 맞춤형 공공의료 서비스를 제공하고 있습니다. 이번 수상을 통해 우리 구가 추진하고 있는 정책이 우리나라를 비롯한 전 세계에 긍정적인 영향을 미치고 공공행정의 발전에 기여할 수 있게 되어 기쁩니다. 앞으로도 주민 모두가 존중받는 도시, 누구나 살고 싶은 도시, 모두가 행복한 도시, 성동구를 위해 최선을 다하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
보다 나은 삶을 위한 변화의 시작. 그 한가운데 성동구가 있습니다.
Thank you very much for sharing with us this commendable initiative, and congratulations once again on winning the UN Public Service Award for this initiative that puts respect for older persons at the center of public services. Ms. Kim, your initiative won the 2020 UN Public Service Award for HEO policy in the category of delivering inclusive and equitable services to leave no one behind. Could you tell us more about your program and how the program provided services to older persons during the COVID-19? Ms. Kim, you have the floor. Ms. Kim, sorry, your microphone. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. It is great honor for me to present the Sangdong's project at this SDGs Symposium in Incheon, a wonderful city in Korea. As you see the video, Sangdong is the age-friendly city and implemented the HEO policy to address the issue of health, welfare, and the social isolation of the old people in the community. HEO means to respect and serve the old people. Next slide, please. Yeah, the main model of this project is the public-private partnership. This PPP was designed to engage health center and private health institutes for health dimension, welfare dimension, local offices, private welfare facilities and foundations, and welfare council were engaged. Local community dimension, a volunteer service center, a private company, and the community council were engaged. This partnership ensured that no one would be left in the community without engagement. Next slide, please. Yeah, with COVID-19, Sangdong changed the health paradigm. First, non-face-to-face video call care service between the old client and the doctor. Second, the client is monitored their health state using the smartwatch, check the blood pressure, regular heartbeat, and physical activities. Sangdong wants this project to apply other countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Kim, for your insightful remarks. And once again, congratulations to you and your team.
Thank you.
We will now proceed to introduce our next speaker, Professor Wang Yao. He is the Director General of the International Institute of Green Finance of the Central University of Finance and Economics of China. Professor Yao, China has put much effort into localizing the SDGs. Could you share with us the national government strategy to localize the SDGs and what are the lessons learned? What is the role of green financing in accelerating the localization of the SDGs in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic? Professor Yao, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Adriana, for your question. Yeah, next, please. Yeah, indeed, China has put a lot of emphasis into localize the SDGs. Next, please. And this is because there are a lot of overlaps between the SDGs and China's national strategy. Especially in recent years, China has shifted its economic focus from faster growth to high quality development in the era of new normal. Therefore, innovation, green, and inclusion has become core values upheld by the Chinese leaders. The government released China's national plan on implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This 2030 agenda aligns with medium and long-term national development strategies, such as the 35-year plan, hopefully in the 14th five-year plan as well. So far, the State Council has approved 6 innovation demonstration pilot zones for innovate sustainable development approaches. I think a key example of China's progress in reaching the SDG is in its achievement in fighting poverty. China is contributing greatly to global efforts towards SDG 1, no poverty, to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. More than 750 million people have been lifted out of the extreme poverty in rural China since 1978. In 2019, only 5.5 million remain under poverty line. So now the Chinese government has set the goal to win the fight against poverty by 2020 and to ensure that those have been lifted out of poverty do not fall back into it. So recently, with the 2060 carbon neutrality pledge made by President Xi, a new focus in SDG 30, climate action has risen. So ministries, local governments, and are busy lifting climate ambitions, and also industries are also occupied in strategies for just transition. Next, please. I think a good example of how to localize SDG in the SDG finance taxonomy launched in May 2020 by UNDP China and China International Center for Economic and Technical Exchange of Ministry of Commerce. My institute, IGF, is the technical lead and co-author of the taxonomy. So as early as at the launch event, we already say wide interest in piloting this taxonomy for local governments, such as Taiyuan, Shenzhen, and financial institutions, such as Agricultural Development Bank of China. The key for success, I would say, is the common language that the taxonomy used to bridge international experience and also China's local market practice. The taxonomy adopted the easy to apply framework of the input-based Chinese green bond catalog, which is already familiar for most financial institutes and also project owners. At the same time, to minimize unintended consequences of investing aligned projects, we also the taxonomy also adopted the international taxonomy, such as the ICMA social bond principle and also IMPs, GRIs, these standards or taxonomies of internationally. So next, please. On the journey to implement China's 2030 agenda, green finance has played a pioneering role, especially in maximize effective cooperation in governance on local, national, and international levels. And also green finance were accelerating the localization of SDGs for green recovery after COVID-19 pandemic. Notably, the guidelines for establishing the green financial system was jointly issued by the People's Bank of China and other 6 ministries in 2016. And this guideline provide a comprehensive framework for green finance supervision and innovation by a top-down approach. And based on guidance, ministries cooperated in an orderly manner despite their different responsibilities in industries, finance, and the environment. This largely avoided fragmented governance. Meanwhile, the well-designed pilot scheme by the central government has encouraged the local provincial authorities actively compete in green finance innovation. The guideline has also strengthened the importance of mutually open international cooperation between Chinese and overseas stakeholders in green finance, investments, and capacity building. China's green finance development, I think, can't be accessible if without international assistance from organizations such as NGFS, SBN, UNPOG, and so on. So at the same time, China is also willing to share its experience to other emerging markets by international platforms and bilateral dialogues and multilateral dialogues. I believe learning from the success of green finance, China can faster accelerate effective, accountable, and inclusive governance in SDG finance as well. Okay, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yao, for highlighting these important points, particularly the shifting towards a growth model with a balanced approach and growing focus on climate action, and also for sharing with us the experiences of the green financing. It is now my honor to introduce Dr. Bernadia Irawati Chandradewi, Secretary General of UCLG ASPAC. Dr. Chandradewi, the role of local governments in achieving the SDGs is critical, and many local governments have become SDG champions. What, in your opinion, can be done to engage local governments in advancing the SDG and encouraging them to become SDG champions? Dr. Chandradewi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Very good morning, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. Annyeonghaseyo, and greetings from UCLG ASPAC, Asia Pacific Secretariat at Jakarta City Hall. And once again, thank you very much for inviting me. I like to congratulate South Korean governments and also South Korean cities for the successful handling this COVID-19. We have been hearing a lot the success and also been able to share the experiences from Korean cities to other cities in Asia Pacific, especially on the 3 T's. Trace, test, and treatment. That has also been adopted by several cities, including Indonesia. So in my presentation, thank you for the question. I think we have been very clear that 60 to 65% of SDGs targets are related to local actions. So therefore, the role of local governments is very, very important in the localization and as well as in the acceleration on the of the SDGs. And the next slide, I think we are very clear on the effects of the pandemics, COVID-19 in local governments have been very, very significant. That include also local revenue reductions, also social impacts. I think gender, there is inequality that is widening. Gender inequality also is increasing. We see in some places there are 300% of increase of domestic violence, mental health among students as well because of this education distant learning process as well as system. And there are many other effects. And of course, the other important effect is these small and informal sectors and small medium enterprises and migrant workers left vulnerable from the lockdown measures. And local governments in each country face different challenges. This also limited to this cross-sectoral cooperations, conflict of interest, and implementing the SDGs, as well as this unsustainable financial schemes. So raising awareness difficulties and also on the accountability and measuring performance. I like to highlight here that what we need for local governments are good enabling environments. Like in the case of Japan, even though Japan faces challenges in relation to limited incorporation, internationalization of the SDGs, and the lack of appropriate legal system and inadequate governance at the local level, but they have been doing also quite good progress in the acceleration of SDGs. While in Indonesia, the legal system is there, but local governments face challenges related to poor visioning, as well as the objective settings, unsustainable implementations, and lack of knowledge use. So there are a combination of things that really challenge. In the next slide, I share here what could be the fundamental aspects to support and encourage local governments in achieving the SDG targets. What we need is establishing as many as possible knowledge hubs and coordination platform to provide best practices, alternatives. We have been also working in compiling the best practices from many cities in the world. We have been collecting more than 500 practices, how local governments responding and recovering from the COVID-19. And the other one also increasing capacity of the institutions, especially local governments, that match with the local context and SDGs issues in every city and every regions. I think what we see from the COVID, solidarity has been increasing, especially in urban areas, even though urban areas we know as the epicenter of the crisis or this COVID-19, but we see also the good cooperations of the philanthropic foundation, also private sectors, as well as local governments in dealing with this COVID-19 responses and recovery. And this also, of course, contributing also in some extent to the implementation of the SDGs. What we see also as the interest of local governments, we see many cities are also have been developing this VLR, voluntary local reviews, and Asia Pacific cities are the highest cities that produce VLRs in the whole world. I think this is quite promising how cities in Asia Pacific have been using VLR as a monitoring and evaluating processes, and also to understand the baseline where they are progressing. And the other one that we can also see as a VLR benefit is in terms of using this as a structured dialogue, the new structured dialogue of local governments with their citizens. And the other one that we are also now working on is this VSR, which is different from the VLR, which is a voluntary sub-regional, sub-national reviews. And we are working in 3 countries, Pakistan, Indonesia, and Malaysia, as these 3 countries are submitting VNR next year. So we would like not to see this VSR as a shadow report, but to support the process of engagement of local governments in the VNR processes. So this is quite interesting also to see that we would like to see how local governments' perspectives are reflected in the VNR. And when we look at the data and the number of VNR submitted to United Nations, we see the increase because in 2016, there were only 25% of VNRs have engaged or have a reflection of local governments, but this number have increased 29 in the 2019 to 56%. So in the conclusions, here, what we need is a combination of things if we want to accelerate these SDGs at the local level. Next slide, please. Financing has been a key issue, as well as this knowledge of local governments to, and also authority of local governments to be able to raise different kind of options on finance, about taxation, municipal bonds, those kind of financial options should be given also a chance for local governments to access. And the effective awareness campaign, this is also seen as a struggle, especially in making a clear connection between this principle of environmental and development permits, and on health protocols. And economic recovery is also seen, and I think the role of digitalization seen as crucial. Like in the case of Indonesia, only less than 10% of small medium enterprises are connected to digital market. So this is a big opportunity. And now local governments are pushed to go digitalization to improve also economic recovery and as well as improve transparency. So in the last thing is addressing social impacts and the pandemics. We have seen ongoing impact and also utilizing ICT to valuing the communities through telemedicine, and also another aspect, last one, is data synchronization for effective social safety nets. Local governments have been developing several database as a hub for making sure that the community get support under safety net programs and other support programs that local governments, even national government provide. And last one is institutional capacity, strengthening the institutional capacity program to ensure the capability of human capital towards the new normal or new adaptive era. To accelerate this has been a key point. And we have been also providing these e-learnings to the local governments as well as public institutions. So thank you very much for your attention, and looking forward also to further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Chandra Dewi, for your very inspiring remarks. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Ms. Katinka Weinberger. She is Chief of the Environment and Development Policy Section in ESCAP. Ms. Weinberger, could you please provide us with an overview of the SDG implementation in Asia and the Pacific region, and how has COVID-19 impacted the progress and what can be done to advance SDG implementation despite the challenges being faced? You have the floor.
Thank you so much. Good morning, and very nice to see all of you. Thank you very much also for this interesting question. Next slide, please. Of which I think the short message will be that 5 years into the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, the world overall is not on track, and this is true for Asia and the Pacific as well. I would like to illustrate this by an analysis that we at ESCAP did on 6 entry points. These are the 6 entry points that were noted as important areas for transformation, the political declaration that was adopted by our heads of state last year in September at the SDG Summit. They're interlinked and they mirror many of the aspects of the goals and targets of the SDG framework. And what you can see on this slide is that our region is not on track in achieving any of the 6 entry areas, but we're furthest behind in respect to shifting towards sustainable and just economies and securing the global environmental commons. And due to lack of time, let me focus on these 2 only. In respect to shifting towards sustainable and just economies, the region's success in boosting economic growth over the last few decades has been accompanied by substantive environmental degradation and a widening social divide. And I think this was further exemplified by the recent lockdowns and the social distancing measures in response to the COVID-19 pandemic that had hit the vulnerable informal workers the hardest, and really highlighted the importance of encouraging a transition from informal to formal employment and the need to provide social protection to all throughout the life cycle. In respect to securing the global environmental commons, which centers on the goal of living within the planet-wide environmental boundaries and protecting global ecological systems, I'd like to point out that the Asia-Pacific region hosts tremendous biodiversity, but is also experiencing devastating environmental degradation. Most of our region is extremely vulnerable to climate change, and this presents an existential threat in many areas. The dramatic encroachments on natural ecosystems and biodiversity are known to be linked to increased risk of zoonotic diseases, and they really demand going forward a rethink of the interactions that humans have with nature. So in short, we were not doing well before the COVID pandemic hit, but it is much expected that with the COVID-19 pandemic, we will fare even worse, because what has begun as a health crisis has quickly become a human and a socioeconomic crisis. But I would also like to say that while the crisis is imperiling progress towards the SDGs, it also makes the achievement all the more urgent and necessary. And it is essential that recent gains are protected as much as possible. So what can be done to advance the SDG implementation despite the challenges that we face? Next slide, please. We completed an analysis of Asian Pacific countries on how quickly countries are advancing across the 6 entry points. Let me just quickly say that a key takeaway is that higher income is not a cure-all solution, and even countries with special needs can progress relatively quickly. The analysis has also shown that there are strong synergies in performance across entry points, but of course the interesting question is, what can we learn from the fastest moving countries? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So what I would like to point out here is, firstly, governments, sorry, the slide before, you moved a little bit too fast for me. Go back one slide, please. Firstly, setting direction and mobilizing stakeholders and partnerships. It is essential that governance formulate a clear direction and mission orientation, coupled with stronger collaboration between governments and other stakeholders, and really focus their efforts on green, inclusive, and resilient recovery with a renewed focus on the SDGs. Second, transformation will not happen without structural changes, such as removing the barriers to basic healthcare and social protection. Third, we really need to sustain the momentum of change amongst our people and our institutions, such as scaling up the emerging local ICT innovations in inclusive and distant learning that we have seen now during the COVID-19 pandemic. And finally, accelerating SDG progress is a complex task, especially in the aftermath of COVID-19. The complex and the interlinked nature of development has never been clearer. Adopting systems thinking will be very helpful to tackle this complexity and the policy trade-off. Next slide, please. Let me just say in closing that the pandemic is an unprecedented wake-up call. It lays bare the deep inequalities and it exposes the failures that are addressed in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. But countries in our region have shown how momentum can be built around the SDGs and the transformations needed. And these experiences are going to be an important part of ensuring that our region builds back better from the pandemic. And finally, we need to leverage this moment of crisis where usual policies and social norms have been disrupted and implement really bold steps. And these bold steps that can steer the world back on track towards the sustainable development goals. Let me just close by saying that this really is the time for change, for really profound systemic shift to a more sustainable economy that works both for people and the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Katinka, for your inspiring remarks and for highlighting the importance of bold steps and profound change, that this is the moment for rethinking our societies. So thank you again. It is now my great pleasure to invite Mr. Kishore Joshi. He is Joint Secretary, National Planning Commission of Nepal. And I would like to ask the following question. Nepal participated in the voluntary national review in 2020 for the second time. Could you share Nepal's progress of SDG implementation with a specific focus on the SDG 16? What are the concrete steps taken to develop effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda? Mr. Joshi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Adriana, for a very relevant question. I have shared key gaps in SDGs that may hinder leaving no one behind in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, opportunities and recommendations from the slides. Now I move directly to answer your questions. That Nepal has VNR and SDG 16 relevant to SDG 16. Nepal has recently participated in voluntary national review 2020. National Planning Commission has published a national review of sustainable development goals in June 2020 as the second VNR report. The report is prepared based on the SDGs Progress Report 2019. According to the VNR report, Nepal's overall progress in COVID in the SDGs is mixed. There is good progress in poverty reduction and some of the human development related goals such as education, gender equality and empowerment, and biodiversity. The goals related to water and sanitation, energy and infrastructure are also in the right direction. Nepal lags behind in the areas related to hunger, industrialization, and climate change impacts. Regarding the SDG 16, good governance and accountability are a priority of the government and are still a work in progress. I am highlighting some of the indicators here. In 2015, trafficking of children abroad was 64 per 100,000. This dropped to 23 in 2018-19. The number of people affected by any kind of disaster or conflict was 17.1 per 1,000, while death from such incidences was 1.7 per 100,000. The targets also include ending the practice of marriage before the legal age and increasing birth registrations. The percentage of girls who were married between 15 to 19 years of age was 19.3%, and the children under 5 years of age who were registered was 77.2% of the child population. This is above the target. The percentage of women in public institutions has significantly increased. The government is committed to strengthening the rule of law and ensuring equal access to justice to all citizens, especially to those who are disadvantaged. It has adopted various legislations in its endeavor to implement the institutional provisions on fundamental rights. Various acts and have been implemented that can help in achieving the targets. A few examples of such that the Commission for Investigation of Abuse of Authority Act, Financial Procedure Act, Good Governance Act, Public Procurement Act, Right to Information Act, and the Audit Act. Though Nepal has made significant efforts towards creating a peaceful, inclusive, and just society, it needs to fast-track progress in all the areas under Goal 16 as cross-cutting issues in order to realize the 2030 agenda. Now I move to the second part of the question, that concrete efforts for effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions. Following are the steps taken by the government to achieve, to implement the 2030 agenda. In the federal level, the high-level National Steering Committee chaired by Right Honorable Prime Minister and Implementation and Monitoring Committee chaired by Vice Chair of the National Planning Commission, among with thematic committees chaired by the NPC, National Planning Commission members have been formed. The committee must be focused on the policy guidelines for SDG implementation. The Sustainable Development and Good Governance Committee of the National Assembly and the Office of the Auditor General are also engaged in oversight, monitoring, and auditing of the SDGs implementation in Nepal. To accelerate the speed, coordination should be ensured. Monitoring and evaluation guidelines mainstreaming the SDG has been developed with a view to accelerate progress and enhance focus and efforts towards the areas in which we are behind. It should be expanded and strengthened up to local level and provincial level. For the strong implementation in the province and local levels, both province level and steering committee and local level steering committee and monitoring and committees must be formed and implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Joshi, for sharing with us Nepal's experience on achieving SDG 16. Thank you again for your insightful remarks. It is now my pleasure to invite Mr. Wilson Gusamo. He is the Assistant Secretary, Infrastructure Policy Branch of the Department of National Planning and Monitoring of Papua New Guinea. I would like to ask you the following question, Mr. Gusamo. Papua New Guinea has also participated in the VNR, in the Voluntary National Review in 2020. Could you share with us progress made on SDG implementation? Has there been any enhancement to institutional arrangements to achieve the SDGs, such as national commissions, coordination mechanisms for sustainable development, or processes to engage non-governmental actors? Mr. Gusamo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. From the VNR process actually help us to see a lot of things in the midst of COVID-19. The winner was prepared, and there are successes and best practices, so lessons that we were able to achieve or find. And as you can see, during our process, we actually develop national institution arrangement structure, building up from the MDG experience. And we have a strong reporting structure from the government to the technical steering working committee, and also we call private sector CSOs, non-government organizations, and also private sector. We call them the coalition of partners. And so during the process, we also develop a very strong, comprehensive VNR roadmap, and also reporting templates for all the central government agencies, private sector, civil society, development partners, and also academic and research institutions. So during that process, we also able to develop a strong stakeholder engagement plan, and also national institutional arrangement and reporting structure. So in a way, we try to see how effective we can prepare for another VNR. So building on from this experience, we are looking forward to another VNR, and we try to present another good comprehensive report in the next VNR. So present the process actually helps us to also look at a very comprehensive, clear picture on the alignment and the implementation of the localized SDG. And one of the process that we undertook was a major success was the localizing. We had like 279 localized indicators that were at the national level, and they are already aligned or embedded in our current medium-term development plan into 2022. And we see that as a first vehicle in implementing our SDG in PNG. And also the process also helped us to review alignment, institutional arrangement, like I said earlier, and integration and implementation of SDGs in various sectors, plans and policy. Actually, when the our MTDP have been aligned, and when the SDGs embedded in our current MTDP, we did a alignment exercise to sub-national and district. So the provincial plans and the district plans actually align to the national plan, and actually the SDGs also covered in the plan. So during the COVID-19, we also seen that it also strengthened some of the systems in our planning process as well. Some of the challenges that we also seen during the preparation of our first VNR is lack of reliable data. We have a huge data gap, a lot of heightened our focal points, and also lack of capacity in terms of templates that we have been given. Lack of funding is one of the ongoing issue, and also to meet our requirements on hosting workshops and also validation workshop and COVID-19. Some of the things that we see also during the COVID-19 pandemic, we also seen a strict UN strict deadline to submit our requirements to present our VNR presentation. And yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, some of the lessons learned from this, from many other factors. I mean, we have seen that finance SDG and strengthening capacity of organizations at all levels are things that we've seen and we're working towards strengthening. We're also looking at strengthening subnational government capacity in SDGs, including CSOs, youth, and private sectors. And data is something we are looking at, data coordination analysis, formulating provincial and district provinces to frame up a province and district framework using our national 279 national indicators. So we are looking forward to doing that, and also coming up with a data mini website with the help of our support from Donna. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your insightful remarks, Mr. Kusamwan, for sharing your national experience, especially on the institutional arrangements. We now have time. Thank you very much. We have time for one question from the audience. I would like to ask, this is a question that came from Egypt, actually. I would like to ask Ms. Chowdhury the following question. How has COVID-19 impacted government's effectiveness and efficiency?
Yes, and thank you. So that is really quite a difficult question to answer, but let me put my thoughts together on this. Firstly, for the governments, it was an increased stress on digitization and the use of digital tools. For example, the contact tracing apps became the centerpiece for countering COVID in several places around the world. And very much like this private sector, the public sector also made greater use of virtual meetings, conferences, etc. But we also became open to the charge of invasive data collection. As a result of lockdowns and social distancing, government offices were functioning at less than their full strength. I think this had a negative impact on efficiency, but at the same time, the government employees were discharging a broader range of functions and were perhaps more effective than before. So leaner workforces and greater effectiveness. There was a renewed emphasis on the central role to be played by the government, economically and financially. Governments had to adopt innovative ways to provide stimulus to the economy, while also ensuring that the impact of the pandemic on individual employees particularly the frontline health workers, is managed and handled. Great impact on modes of communications. Governments had to effectively communicate the need for masks for maintaining social distance symptoms. Government's public sector roped in leading public figures, celebrities. There were constant announcements and reinforcements. I think the greatest challenge for the public sector was keeping the communities together and moving them together to follow the protocols and to take up the protocols. Of course, huge loss of lives and livelihoods, economic impacts as the governments overspent and raised debts. But the crisis is still with us, issues are still unfolding, and the governments will have to keep reinventing and managing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Chowdhury, for highlighting those important points. And I wanted to mention that this question came from Professor Laila Al-Baradai through the pre-registration, and she's from Egypt. So unfortunately, this concludes our session because we are running a few minutes behind. I think we had a very rich discussion and presentations from the various distinguished speakers. And there are a few key messages that I would like to share. Number one, we heard that public institutions play a critical role in addressing and recovering from COVID-19. The central role of government has emerged clearly and more than ever. The 11 principles of effective governance for sustainable development can provide a pathway to recovery. We also heard that preventing corruption and enhancing accountability is central to a sustainable recovery. Third, there are several good examples across the world of how governments are ensuring that services target the needs of and include the voices of vulnerable groups, particularly addressing the needs of persons with disabilities and older persons. We heard about the important role of green financing in promoting a sustainable recovery. Fifth, we heard that local governments are at the forefront of delivering services, but that strengthening their capacities is really essential for an effective recovery. Six, we also heard from countries like Nepal, who have taken concrete steps to strengthen SDG 16, both challenges and also strides made towards more effective, inclusive, and accountable institutions. Seven, we also heard about the importance of putting in place institutional arrangements for SDG implementation, and there as well, challenges and opportunities, as in the case of Papua New Guinea. This concludes the very insightful session. I thank once again the speakers for their inspiring remarks, and I would now like to give the floor to Dr. Hyun-Sok Kim, who will moderate the next session. Dr. Kim, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from Incheon, Korea. Welcome to the session 2 on partnerships and capacity development to implement the Sustainable Development Goals and build resilient societies. My name is Hyun-Sok Kim, and I am the Senior Program Management Expert at UNPOG from the Ministry of the Interior and Safety, Republic of Korea. We have a rich agenda today and a group of distinguished speakers from Asia and the Pacific region. Please note, the symposium will be recorded and live streamed on DESA Facebook, and it will be uploaded on UNPOG website after the symposium. Participants will have the opportunity to ask questions through the Q&A functions on Zoom and through chat on Facebook. We will have also received questions during the registration process. I will invite our speakers and ask questions, and the speakers will answer these questions. The importance of partnership has been fully recognized by the UN, by business, and by all leading institutions in international development. In the SDG era, all societal sectors are recognized as key development actors and part of the solution. In this session, we will explore ways to strengthen regional cooperation and key stakeholder engagement of the private sector, civil society, youth, and vulnerable groups through partnerships. Developing capacities for effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions in the context of building back better will also be addressed, as well as developing capacities for recovery and resilience for accelerating the SDG implementation. We will now begin our panel discussion. It is my great pleasure to introduce the first speaker, Mr. Ashish Narayan. He is the principal economist from Sustainable Development and Climate Change Department at Asian Development Bank. Mr. Narayan, I'd like to ask you the following question. In what ways can regional cooperation be strengthened to help in building more resilience in Asia and the Pacific region? Mr. Narayan, I'd like to request your answer, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Kim, for the question. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the participants. As far as the ADB is concerned, we see regional cooperation as being a critical element in building resilience, but also building back better across Asia and the Pacific region. Today, there is much greater coordination and cooperation among all the countries in the region on information sharing, capacity building, and policy coordination. This is complemented by another great advantage that we have now, the digital economy. And these two together give us an effective means of working together to overcome the disruptions to trade and supply chain driven growth that has been brought about by the recent pandemic. How can cooperation help? Over the past 50 years, connectivity has been critical in integrating the region. It has not only led to economic growth, but it's also built resilience. The pandemic threatens this progress. The ADB, therefore, is investing in building resilient connectivity through improving health infrastructure, protocols, and facilities at entry gateways, ports, and airways. A good example of our approach is the Sri Lanka Health System Enhancement Project that aims to strengthen health information systems and disease surveillance capacity and implementation of international health regulations in critical ports of entry in the country. These efforts will, however, need to be complemented by governments working together to harmonize health and safety protocols. Without this, we cannot ensure that critical connectivity infrastructure will remain open during crisis. At the same time, as Ms. Katinka Weinberger mentioned in her last presentation, we cannot forget the other big threat to resilience, which is climate change. With the reduced fiscal headroom in many countries, it will be important to use regional cooperation to catalyze private sector investments in high quality and green connectivity infrastructure. With this in mind, the ADB has set up the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility, an infrastructure fund collectively funded by the ADB, member countries, and donors that supports governments in Southeast Asia in preparing and financing infrastructure projects that crowd in private sector investments, promote environmental sustainability, and contribute to climate change goals. Digitization of supply chains was important before the pandemic for improving efficiency. Post the COVID-19 pandemic, it is essential for resilience. There is a need to build, previous slide, please. Yeah, there is a need to build digitization capabilities in government and private sector. However, regional coordination will still be needed to ensure interoperability, data security, and harmonization of protocols. Without this, it will be very hard to get the full benefits that technology offers. So with this in mind, we have been supporting private sector stakeholders on an initiative to create and promote digital standards and protocols, regional digital standards and protocols that will drive interoperability along the entire trade supply chain. The way we do trade facilitation will also need to change. There is much that dialogue using regional mechanisms such as ASEAN, the Greater Mekong Subregion, CARIC, and SASIC can do to ensure cross-country information exchange and acceptability of digital copies of certificates exchanged through properly secured systems. Facilitation measures will also be required to support new kinds of trade and make integration more inclusive, particularly by bringing in excluded segments like small and medium enterprises, which the digital economy now facilitates. In South Asia, for example, ADB's trade facilitation initiatives under the sub-regional platform of SASIC seeks to modernize and advance cross-border e-commerce for SMEs through streamlining legal frameworks, custom processes, and use of ICT. Finally, regional cooperation will be required to reduce vulnerabilities and strengthen capacities to mitigate the shared risks from health-related issues. The ADB is working through existing regional platforms in the Greater Mekong Subregion, in South Asia and Central Asia to strengthen our member countries' health systems and institutional capacity to prevent, prepare for, and respond to regional health threats in the future. So in conclusion, I would just like to stress that regional cooperation facilitated by digital governance is critical to building governance in the region. Thank you very much, Dr. Kim. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Narayan, for your inspiring remarks. You gave us comprehensive insights how regional cooperation and digital economy are working in Asia and the Pacific region in this pandemic era. Now, I'd like to invite our next speaker, Mr. Alikan Baymenov. He is the chairman of the steering committee of the Astana Civil Service Hub. Mr. Baymenov, I'd like to ask you, how can institutions build capacities to enhance resilience? Can you share initiatives of Astana Civil Service Hub in recovery from the COVID-19 and SDGs implementation? Mr. Baymenov, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kim. And let me begin by thanking the organizers of this symposium, which is very timely and relevant. I would like to express our gratitude to UNDESA and personally the Honorable Liu Zhenmin. And we have been conducting many events together with UNDESA, and we look forward to further fruitful cooperation. We're also thankful to the government of the Republic of Korea, one of the founding countries of the Astana Civil Service Hub, for being supportive to the Hub's initiatives since its very inception. I express my sincere appreciation personally to His Excellency Minister Chin Yong. The meeting we had with the Minister last year has given a new impetus and modalities to our cooperation. So answering your question, indeed resilience strengthening has become a key focus nowadays. in addition to the characteristics required for governments to meet the VUCA world challenges, the pandemic has created a new reality and once again revealed the key role of public institutions. Undoubtedly, it's important to talk about digital transformation and innovation. In the light of the changing circumstances, it's also critical to rethink and distribute resources and responsibilities between levels and within each level of governance, and provide institutional flexibility of structures. At the same time, the psychological facet is no less important. It's more important than ever to give high priority to the workplace environment. Thus, along with technology, great attention should be paid to leadership and HR policies in the system of public administration. In this regard, we have to rethink and enhance the role of HR units. Another pivotal aspect contributing to resilience building is trust. Public trust is as important as it's a driver, stimulating, motivating, and providing confidence to public servants. It creates conditions to increase the effectiveness and resilience of public service. This pandemic period, when there is a need to take decisions promptly, has emphasized once again that trust is not only social capital, but also the effective administrative capital. In this connection, retaining legitimacy, accountability, and transparency should be at the core of the decision-making. At the same time, we should ensure a balance between maintaining security and respecting the rights and freedoms of citizens. Of course, along with above-mentioned professional development and training of civil servants should not be interrupted. At the same time, the current crisis made the role of cooperation even more important. In this connection, we are grateful that a separate session within the symposium is devoted to the partnership. Notwithstanding the reduction in direct transport connections, the new reality requires us to focus on maintaining and developing partnerships. This once again proves the need for such platforms as the Astana Civil Service Hub. We are grateful to the government of Kazakhstan for ensuring the operation of the hub, which is in itself is one of the manifestations of Kazakhstan's contribution to the implementation of SDGs 16 and 17. And second part of your question, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have facilitated experience sharing by organizing more than 20 online capacity building events, in which over 3,500 civil servants, scholars, and experts from 46 countries have taken part. Besides, in times when learning best practices and cooperation are gaining ever-growing importance, Astana Hub has launched the Virtual Alliance of Practitioners for experience sharing in the context of COVID-19. The digital platform gathers and disseminates existing practices and innovative solutions employed in different countries. Today, the digital platform contains over 40 useful cases and articles that were shared by 10 countries and about 20 organizations, and which are available at the Astana Civil Service Hub website. It gives them a pleasure to note that with generous and comprehensive support of the Minister of Interior and Safety of the Republic of Korea, Astana Hub and the UNDP in Kazakhstan in 2021 will start implementing the joint project on capacity building for innovation in governance and digitalization of public services, covering Central Asia and Caucasus, based on the inspiring model of the Republic of Korea, which serves as benchmark in digital government and innovation. Along with various capacity building events on HR issues, the Astana Hub has also initiated a measure study on maturity of HR processes in Kazakhstan state bodies. We'll continue working in these directions. And I will stop here. Let me thank once again the organizers of this event. I wish all the participants good health and ample prosperity to your home countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Baimenov, for your insightful remarks. You kindly shared with us that the initiatives and strategies for capacity building of the Astana Civil Service Hub in recovery from the COVID-19 and SDGs implementation. Thank you. Then I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Neil Ratan. He is the global leader from Digital Government Network and Government and Public Sector in PwC, India. Mr. Ratan, I'd like to pose your question. UNDP has partnered with PwC on private sector strategies for pandemic recovery. Can you tell us more about the initiative and the private sector's role, not only in recovery, but also in the acceleration of SDGs implementation? Mr. Ratan, we are waiting for your relevant response, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kim, and a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody on my panel and everybody else listening in. Let me answer this question in three parts, and I'll start with the UNDP-PwC partnership. The pandemic has had an unparalleled negative impact on the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals. The response to the crisis actually needs a whole of government and a whole of society approach, where every crucial stakeholder is engaged effectively for a holistic development of strategies and solutions. We need partnerships, cooperation, and coordination for an effective and meaningful response. At PwC, our purpose is to build trust in society and solve important problems. Leveraging a vast network of private and public sector clients, we are working on structuring and implementing various solutions to mitigate major challenges that this great pandemic poses. To this extent, as a long-term advisor to UNDP, we are strategic partners to the UNDP's flagship initiative, Recover Better Together, a COVID-19 private sector global facility. This facility is operating at a global and national level to enable multi-sector, whole of government, and a whole of society approach to tackle the crisis. 9 of our member firms across the world have partnered together to co-create solutions with global standards that can be adapted to a local context. PwC has been involved with this initiative right from the conceptual stage and has been playing an instrumental role in operationalizing the initiative. We are in the process of designing and developing finance and policy solutions, the organization structure, governance structure, along with anchoring the multi-stakeholder engagement. The engagement also presents opportunity for very quick adoption of the various solutions that are developed using this initiative. Moving on to the second part of the question, which was around the private sector role in recovery. Since the onset of the pandemic, private sector has been at the forefront of the mitigation and crisis response measures. We have seen enterprises swiftly move to work from home environment to protect the workforce and, more importantly, reduce the burden on the health systems. We have also seen private sector actively engage with government and public sector enterprises to devise solutions and strategies to mitigate various aspects of the pandemic. Moving forward, actually, there are three major areas I feel private sector will end up playing a very crucial role. First, and probably the most important and the most topical right now, is inclusive vaccination. With the good news of potential vaccines all around us, private sector should, and I believe will end up playing a very proactive role in ensuring effective vaccination of every person on this planet, from production to storage to distribution to last mile delivery. There are quick solutions that can be anchored and delivered by the private sector, which can complement the efforts of the government across the world in this absolutely mammoth task we had at hand. Second would be institutionalizing our ecosystem partnerships. To a large extent, this pandemic blurred the lines between private and public sector. We saw historically unlikely and ad hoc cooperation and partnerships emerge between governments and private sector to enforce pandemic norms, supply of essential medical equipment, welfare delivery, etc., etc. This was also not without various uncertainties and confusion. We saw right from testing to medical devices to nature of partnerships to role of stakeholders, legality. There were many areas of confusion all around. Moving on, the third aspect I would say is the growth revival through differentiated strategies. This is going to be a product of economic rationale and the firm level culture. A quick recovery is possible only when private investments pick up pace. With normalcy returning, hopefully, and stimulus packages running actively around the world, we will see more and more enterprises return to business as usual and kickstart the growth engine. Moving on to the third very important aspect, Dr. Kim, you asked, in terms of the private sector role in acceleration of the SDG implementation. It's extremely ironic that the decade of action has commenced with a year of challenges. However, with crisis comes opportunities. In the post-pandemic world, I see there are two areas where private sector will play a very crucial role in accelerating realization of SDGs. The first is investment into sustainability, and we heard many conversations around this in the earlier sessions. We would notice that the assets managed under sustainable investment strategies have, I understand, crossed more than $30 trillion mark. Sustainability is giving investors more and more options, both in terms of duration and geographical coverage. Still, however, this amount cannot match the more than $100 trillion worth assets managed by only the top 500 global asset managers. This mismatch is clearly an indicator of the underlying problem that private sector is, though investing, but not investing adequately into sustainability. And this is leading to further losses when a crisis like this strikes. Going forward, we will see more and more investments into sustainability from investors, and we will need mechanisms within private sector to ensure that such investments actually materialize as well. Moving on to the other aspect for accelerating the SDGs is the realization of specific goals. With public sector focus converging on health, we will see greater role of private sector in health, particularly the digital health interventions. In the post-pandemic world, it is a great opportunity for private sector to become true partners in delivery of public health services. The other area really close to my heart as well, the disruption to normal operations of schools and colleges have highlighted the lack of alternate delivery channels of quality education. We've also seen the digital divide playing such a detrimental role in digital education. We are envisaging a far greater private sector participation in development and capacity and delivery of quality education technology solutions, catering to various segments of population across the planet. The pandemic has also emphasized the economic importance to incorporate sustainable practices into daily operations of enterprises. Among other things, we believe CSR will play a key driver to realize SDG goals around innovation, sustainable cities, decent work, etc., etc. At PwC, we are walking the talk.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Rattan. I should inform you that time is up, so please wrap up your presentation shortly. Thank you for your cooperation.
Last statement. At PwC, we are walking the talk. PwC has made a worldwide science-based commitment to achieve a net zero greenhouse gas emission by 2030. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Rattan. Sorry for interruption.
I was done.
Yeah, thank you for your knowledgeable insights. As you commented, partnership with the private sector has a crucial role in this pandemic era. Now, I'd like to introduce Mr. Gomo Padong as our next speaker. He is the director at Philippines Social Enterprise Network. Mr. Padong, I'd like to ask you, civil society was a key stakeholder in the development of the 2030 agenda. What can civil society do to ensure inclusive and equitable recovery from the COVID-19 and contribute to the successful realization of the agenda? Mr. Padong, please share your thoughts with us, and you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kim. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone. It's a pleasure to join this panel today, and I look forward to the interaction after the inputs. The next slide, please. To answer Dr. Kim's initial question, it's true that civil society was a key stakeholder in the 2030 agenda. So to ensure inclusive and equitable recovery from COVID-19 and to contribute to the successful realization of the agenda, the contributions of civil society should be harnessed. Unfortunately, such is not the case for a lot of responses in Asia. This slide indicates responses of civil society in cooperation with governments, and on the right column are some responses where civil society did independent work from government. For some of our partners, especially in Indonesia, some of the best practices include involvement of technical staff, such as medical doctors, lab scientists to sit on response committees, or complementing the work in local hospitals and clinics. Some even raised and provided funds directly for COVID responses. Independent from government, immediate activities were around communication programs, distribution of resources, supplies, as well as masks and personal protective equipments, as well as ensuring continuity of care in the health facilities. Next slide, please. Active civil society involvement has resulted into positive results, including number one, a coordinated response, increased community engagement and risk communication, inclusivity of different sectors of the community in the response, as well as civil society involvement in advisory and technical committees. On to my third slide, please. I would like to share some insights of a webinar series which my organization, the Institute for Social Entrepreneurship in Asia, has run for 10 weeks from May to July 2020 to capture responses from social enterprises and social enterprise resource institutions in Asia, from India to Vietnam, from Philippines to China. And the recordings of the webinar series are available in our Facebook page. The first insight is that the webinars validated the value of multi-country learning platforms of social enterprises and civil society organizations, featuring models, initiatives, and networks in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic and building back better. Each model or initiative featured was an inspirational story demonstrating various roles of social enterprises and civil society organizations in responding to the pandemic that in ways that, number one, promoted social enterprise values of social equity, sustainability, and solidarity in protecting and catering to the unmet needs of the marginalized and most vulnerable sectors and communities. Social enterprises provided access to health services, masks and personal protective equipment, healthy food, livelihood, agricultural services, information, education, and the basic needs and services of marginalized sectors and communities, as well as social entrepreneurs and frontliners who serve them. Also, social enterprises pursued social innovation and creatively utilized ICT and the social media to become more responsive and to enhance outreach. They mobilize stakeholders, community assets, and networks in reaching and catering to the marginalized and most vulnerable. Finally, they also disrupted and showed potential for disruptions for the common good. Next slide, please. The second insight is that multi-country learning platforms need to support and draw from local initiatives and expertise to build new and enhanced capabilities among social enterprises, resource institutions, civil society networks to respond to a changed reality, recover and build back better. This may come in many expressions and dimensions and would depend on the nature of social enterprise products and services, economic subsectors where the social enterprises are situated, for example, crafts or food, health or ecotourism, agriculture or microfinance. Depending on societal context, social stakeholders and markets served for developing and developed market economies, urban or rural, as well as accessible or hard to reach in relation to ICT and other infrastructure. Next slide. The third is that multi-country collaboration to project collective impact of platforms relevant to the recovery of social enterprises to be able to contribute to the SDGs entails developing a system of responsive tools and local capacities to measure impact and progress in achieving them, and the commitment of participating social enterprises and social enterprise resource institutions to do such. Let me stop here. Thank you for your attention, and then I look forward to the question and answer portion after. Thank you so much, Dr. Kim, and to the organizers. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Padong, for sharing your experiences. You highlighted that the civil society has been engaged by providing its excellent resources, such as medical doctors and scientists, funds and policy recommendations to the public sector in the COVID-19 response. Thank you. Next, it is my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Mohamed Nasseri. He is the Regional Director at UN Women Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. Mr. Nasseri, I'd like to ask you, while gender equality is its own SDG, progress is uneven. In the context of COVID-19, gender equality matters in effective response. Can you talk about how and why gender matters in the COVID-19 response? Mr. Nasseri, please answer this question, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kim, and very appreciative of your very able moderation and summarizing very succinctly what our colleagues have been saying. I'm also very grateful to the Symposium's team for this very smooth organization. Unfortunately, any pandemic exacerbates any existing inequalities, and this is the case of COVID-19. It has disproportionately affected women and girls, especially in the Asia and the Pacific region, on multiple fronts. The first, we've seen increased discrimination and violence against women. Some of the examples are widespread stigma and marginalization linked to race and gender, increasing the gender-based violence and protection risks. Experiences, again, from the region have demonstrated that where women are primarily responsible for procuring and cooking food for the family, increasing food insecurity as a result of the crisis have placed them at a heightened risk. There is intimate partner violence and other forms of domestic violence. We also do see challenges in meeting the needs of women healthcare workers, including first responders and care workers. As we all know, women constitute 70% of workers in the health and social sector globally and are on the front lines of the response. Women healthcare workers have called attention to the specific needs beyond personal protective equipment, including to menstrual hygiene needs. Psychosocial support also should be provided. We also have seen the impact, the negative impact on the women's economic situation. They have been disproportionately impacted by COVID. We all know that women generally earn less, save less, hold less secure jobs, and more likely to be employed in the informal sector. They have less access to social protection. Their capacity to absorb economic shocks is therefore less than of that of men. A large share of women's employment is in the informal economy, including domestic work, jobs that lack labor rights and social protection, including healthcare, sick leave, or unemployment benefits. We've also seen loss of livelihoods and increased gender gaps in the economy as women are more likely to be engaged in the informal sector. And we've seen an increased burden of unpaid care work on women and girls who are assuming additional domestic responsibilities. Because now we have increased caregiving responsibilities for the elderly, homeschooling for the kids, and that has all been put on the shoulders of women. Unfortunately, you also see in many parts of the world the exclusion from the leadership role when it comes to designing and implementing response to COVID. While women are 70% of the respondents and the healthcare respondents to COVID, they are often marginalized from the decision-making space. If we move to the following slide, I can also talk to how we as UN Women in the Asia and the Pacific have very swiftly responded. Started by generating right data and evidence. We've put out a survey in 10 countries that reached 27 million people. And unfortunately, the results of these surveys have somehow confirmed what I have stated earlier on the existing inequalities. We've worked on influencing the local and government strategies, especially looking into the economic stimulus packages. And we've been working with the law enforcers to look into cyber crime and cyber harassment issues, because a lot of the violence against women have moved into the cyber space. If we move to the following slide, we've also seen how can we have utilized our expertise in different countries across the region by giving space to the civil society and by giving agency to women's groups across the region. And finally, going to the final slide, we can also see that we've been continuing to try to advance women's leadership in the response and the recovery of the pandemic, ensuring minimum representation of 30% of women in national and subnational responses in certain countries, facilitate the engagement of women leaders in the decision-making and giving them the space to the extent possible. I do note the limited amount of time, Dr. Kim, so I will stop here and I will be happy to respond to questions later on. Very grateful to you, and back to you.
And thank you, Mr. Nasiri, for sharing comprehensive thoughts. It is very impressive that you and your partners are striving to respond COVID-19 for ensuring women's rights and needs through broad partnerships. Thank you. Now, I'd like to invite a very special speaker, Ms. Sarah Yoon. She is the winner in the 4th Youth Forum on SDG Implementation just 4 days ago. Ms. Yoon, I'd like to congratulate on winning the award and ask you a following question. How can youth be energized and engaged in building resilient and sustainable societies? What are the ways to meaningfully engage them? Welcome, Ms. Yoon, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Before I move on, my camera doesn't seem to be detected in this Zoom at the moment. Would it be okay if I proceed without the camera, or would it be preferable that I exit very quickly and come back? Hello?
Dr. Kim, you're on mute.
Hello?
Okay, go ahead, please. The
yeah, is it okay if I
slides. Oh, okay, okay.
Okay, can I proceed?
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Okay, greetings, dear participants of the symposium. I apologize for the lack of a camera. It doesn't seem to be detected on Zoom at the moment. But thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Sarah Yoon, and today I'll be speaking on behalf of the youth and how the youth can be better engaged and synergized with in order to build more resilient and sustainable societies as we bounce back from COVID-19. I'll speak with reference to what I proposed at the 4th Youth Forum on SDG Implementation held just last Friday, while also drawing from some of the valuable discussion points that were carried forward by the youth. Next, please. So, as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to evolve, it has become alarmingly clear that its impacts will severely and disproportionately affect the youth in all known spheres of life. It is upon this light that I proposed the three-pronged connectivity approach as a direction to increase the resilience of the youth through their connectivity in the digital, market, and decision-making spheres. These specific targets were chosen as they're where youth exclusion occurs most severely in the current pandemic. More importantly, they're interconnected in the sense that one sphere cannot be meaningfully or sustainably improved without the other. This signifies that tackling these three spheres that mutually reinforce one another can potentially maximize the youth's capacity for resilience to build back better from COVID-19. However, in the interest of time for today, I would like to draw your attention specifically to the market and decision-making connectivities, as that's also where the discussion majorly took place during the forum. Next, please. Firstly, on market connectivity. The market preparedness of the youth, or their relevance and indispensability at work, must be strengthened through the development of future-proof skills through e-learning, project-based learning, and digital literacy that will empower the youth with technical, vocational, entrepreneurial, and socio-emotional skills that are relevant and marketable. And speaking from my own personal experience during university, participating in youth consultancy groups and working on action and research projects that were actually in partnership with corporations as our real clients allowed me to gain not only hands-on and problem-solving opportunities, but also resilience traits, things like perseverance, courage, or learning from failures, which I could not have garnered only through in-class learning and ended up becoming extremely critical when I wanted to land my positions of desired jobs in the job market. And I see this becoming particularly more significant in the long run, as such cultivation signifies that youth will be better equipped and mobilized to transcend the shrinking traditional job market and seize opportunities for self-employment, startups, and innovative forms of youth entrepreneurship, which is critical given the rapidly changing nature of jobs. In this context, we also had a very fruitful discussion about the Urban Innovation Challenge, Citypreneurs, which I actually helped organize 2 years ago in Seoul, that serves as a powerful example of how youth entrepreneurship can be channeled to leverage digital technologies and skills to not only tap into market opportunities, but also to drive meaningful social impact that contributes to sustainable development. However, I believe that the internal development of the youth alone is not sufficient in assuring their resilience. Rather, it should be complemented with the external development of systems, policies, and institutions that define the job market for the youth. To this end, I believe that market readiness for the youth should be a two-way concept that applies to both the youth and the market. Secondly, in regard to inclusive decision-making of the youth, during the youth forum, there was a common concern surrounding the one-time nature of many projects and opportunities that involve the youth and the lack of continuance, especially from the marginalized and vulnerable groups whose voices we need even more. On this concern, the youth agreed on the importance of further institutionalizing youth inclusion in decision-making processes through what is called youth checks. Governments can conduct ex-ante assessments or establish built-in mechanisms to address short-termism in policies to evaluate and monitor the distributional impact of government's actions on future generations, and to utilize these findings to promote greater youth inclusivity. Furthermore, expanding opportunities or platforms for the youth to take actual positions in political posts or political seats was also reminded as a part of ongoing efforts to tangibly and sustainably empower the youth. Next slide, please. So tying everything back together, these were 3 points that I wanted to address during the presentation today that should be remembered and recalled throughout the process of youth engagement. But due to a lack of time, I won't be going through each and every one of it. So at the end of the day, the overall impact that I hope to foresee through this integrated and targeted approach is an increase in not only the quantity, but also the quality of youth's connectivity to digitalization, market, and decision-making processes, which are very important in properly mainstreaming the youth as a true agent of change in our commitment to sustainable development. Thank you very much for your time. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Yoon, for your inspiring remarks. I fully agree with you that youth inclusion and empowerment should be considered as an instrument for the SDG implementation. Thank you again. Now, I'd like to introduce Mr. Sanjaya Bhatia. He is the head of UNDRR office, for Northeast Asia and Global Education and Training Institute. Mr. Bhatia, I'd like to ask you, risk-informed governance is becoming more critical in the current context. What can governments do to move towards risk-informed sustainable development? Mr. Bhatia, we are waiting for your relevant response and you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kim. This is a big challenge today, and there are a few steps that governments can take to improve their risk governance. One is especially to join international and regional initiatives and networks, because there are many of them around, and they all talk about resilience and implementation of global frameworks with resilience in mind. And in these networks and initiatives, they'll be able to exchange ideas with peers and understand what they are doing and adapt and adopt. Also use many tools available. There are many tools available, and I'll talk about them in my presentation briefly. Try to look at resilience markers in the public budgets. That is being adopted by many countries to have a kind of a checklist to make sure that resilience is being addressed in all the development investments. And then again, look at systemic risk. So the next slide, please. When we look at risk, we are more in this part which is in the red, which is we are good at responding to disasters. But where we want to be is in the green blue part, which is being able to live with uncertainty, because as you see today also there is a lot of uncertainty, but we should be able to manage the risk, not just responding to disasters. Next slide, please. And to do that, one of the other possibilities is to enhance the capacity of the civil servants, both at the national and the global level, so that they are in a position to implement the Sendai framework, the SDGs, the Paris Agreement in cohesion, because all three are interrelated. We cannot achieve the SDGs without disaster proofing, and climate proofing. So that needs to be done. And there are many tools available also, as I mentioned. There are scorecards for local governments and even for national governments. There is even a health scorecard which would help governments manage the current pandemic, for example. The next slide, please. And we, of course, provide, responding to this, we are providing training. We provide training to about 1,000+ civil servants from around the world, from both national and global, from national and local governments. We also coordinate with training institutes around the world to leverage this kind of training to make these tools available. We also coordinate Making Cities Resilient 2030 global partnership, which includes all key urban risk reduction partners from around the world, helping cities all the way from now to 2030 to implement both the Sendai framework, but in cohesion with the SDGs and the Paris Agreement and the New Urban Agenda and so on, so that the governments can practice and implement risk-informed governance. And the last point I would like to say is governments need to also look at multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder. Leave no one behind, make sure everyone is part of the process, and look at risk from systemic angle. Systemic meaning, for example, in COVID, it is a biological problem. Started as a biological problem, but today it's a socio-economic crisis. So understand the systemic nature of the risk. With that, I will end my intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatia, for your insightful remarks. You focused the necessity of capacity development on disaster risk reduction. And in this context, your organization is playing an important role in training civil servants. Thank you again. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce Ms. Karma Hamudorji, as the last but not least speaker in our session. She is the chairperson of the Royal Civil Service Commission of Bhutan. Ms. Dorji, I'd like to ask you, can you share Bhutan's experience in responding to the pandemic? What are the lessons learned? What are the plans for strengthening capacities for future shock? Ms. Dorji, I'd like to request your answer, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Kim, for this opportunity, to you and DESA as a whole. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from Bhutan. So I will be presenting the case of Bhutan and how we have responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide. So Bhutan is a mountainous, landlocked, very small country. Next slide. Located in South Asia between China and India. Next slide. In terms of our development philosophy, we have what we call the gross national happiness as our development philosophy, which is a holistic and sustainable approach to development, which balances material and non-material values. Next slide. So as far as the COVID situation in Bhutan, we've been quite fortunate. We've had 0 deaths, less than 400 cases, and very minimal community transmission. Next slide. So in terms of the lessons learned, the first lesson is leadership is key. In Bhutan, led by His Majesty the King, together with the Prime Minister, they have worked tirelessly in terms of trying to ensure that we contain the pandemic and also all the socio-economic challenges that have come with the pandemic. And that we see them working tirelessly, visiting all the red zones, visiting all the places that are where people are affected. And that in turn, because of this kind of leadership and this kind of political will and commitment into a whole of government approach as never before. So next point. Can we go to the next point? So this, in turn, we see has led to a very effective and efficient management and command structure, which consists of a national level COVID task force, which looks at it at the whole of at the national level. And we have 3 regional COVID task force that looks after the various districts. And then that in turn, we have the respective district COVID task force. So this cascading from the national level down to the regional level, down to the district level has been a very effective command structure that was set up very quickly as soon as the situation started escalating. And another learning from the current pandemic is that we have to be agile and we have to be flexible in our approach. What used to work in the normal times now doesn't work as well, and there has to be rapid developments that keep up with the pandemic. So a very simple example, the procurement rules were simplified and were made very easy so that procurement of medical equipment, PPEs, and all of that goods and services to contain the pandemic were quickly procured. Similarly, there was monetary and fiscal measures put into place to ensure that there was as much as possible to mitigate the very devastating effects of the pandemic. Next point. So as never before, we see that there was a lot of collaboration with many stakeholders, including non-government organizations. Next slide. Next slide, please. So in terms of the kind of stakeholders that we've worked with, as I've mentioned, the governments at the central and local governments as well. We have the security forces also mobilized. We had what we call voluntary peacekeepers, or they're called DESUMs, consisting of people from all sections of society. We had the non-government organizations, state-owned enterprises, private citizens, private enterprises, all pitching in and trying to work in tandem with the government. Next slide. So the pandemic also has shown us that this is an opportunity to foster a lot of structural reforms in building what we say effective disaster management systems, in accelerating the digitization process, the digital economy, and an opportunity to rationalize many of the red tape that exists and to relook it and try and make it simpler. Next slide. This is my last slide. So in terms of what have we done in terms of building government capacities, we have done it in the past and we continue to do now, is soft skilling. We believe that we have to skill all our civil servants, especially at the managerial and supervisory positions, including those who are working in hospitals, given the situation that they are under a lot of stress, basically giving them trainings on mindfulness, emotional intelligence, building competency frameworks, which we have started from last year, and we continue to work on it because these are the blueprints in terms of what investments we want to make into HRD. Coaching and mentoring is mandatory. All supervisors at division level who are at chief and at minimum at division level are given coaching and mentoring skills, because that's the way we believe that performance can be enhanced. There's better communication, there's a better culture at work. And of course, specific to the pandemic, we moved to digital solutions for capacity buildings. We've signed up to a virtual learning platform as an example, Mind Tools, so that all supervisors, managers have continued to learn because of physical distancing. There are challenges to holding, the conventional trainings. So this, in a very brief, are the kind of investments we've made. So thank you very much, Ms. Kim, for this opportunity. I close now.
Thank you, Ms. Dorji, for sharing Bhutan's experiences with us. I was surprised that the number of COVID-19 cases in Bhutan is quite low, and how successfully Bhutanese government and multiple stakeholders collaborate in the COVID-19 response. Thank you again. Now we will have a Q&A session. Before we get started, I'd like to inform you that we are running a little behind schedule, so please kindly stay connected till the session is over. Thank you for your cooperation in advance. As I have notified you earlier, we have received a number of questions from the audience during the session and during the registration process. All the questions are very interesting, but I will choose several questions from among them due to the time constraints. Here is the question from Shivani Apadu. The question is, I'd like to know if you have examples of countries who have experienced disaster events during the COVID-19 and how the respective countries have tackled the situation in terms of response and recovery as well as resilience. I'd like to forward this question to Mr. Sanjaya Bhatia from UNDRR office. Mr. Bhatia, could you give us your thoughts on this issue? Is it okay?
No, thank you, Shivani. This is a very, very complex situation. So this is what we call a cascading emergency, that you have one situation, which is the COVID-19, and then we've had, for example, cyclones in the Pacific, we've had in Philippines, we've had in Bangladesh, and currently right now happening in Central America. So it makes a complex situation even worse. And there are precedences in the past also. For example, the Great East Japan earthquake, which caused a tsunami, which caused the Fukushima problem. So compounding the complexity of the situation. How to tackle it is very difficult for any country, so developed or developing. And of course, with less capacity, it becomes even more complex. The one way is to have SOPs and guidelines in place beforehand, and also when doing the scenarios for the risk planning, to look at firstly the kind of scenarios which are unthinkable or unexpected, because that's what's going to happen. It's always the unexpected that happens. It is not, it's not so well planned that we can say this is going to happen next. Nobody knew even in December or November last year that the world would be locked down in COVID this year. So it's always the unexpected. So have that as part of the planning. And that's why I mentioned also living with uncertainty. So expect uncertainty to happen and plan accordingly. So the countries which did face this problem, they managed as best they could, but of course there were a lot of challenges. For example, even moving people to shelters, then there's no physical distancing, obviously, and then putting them into the health system because it's already overwhelmed with COVID patients. So all these complexities are there. They manage somehow. But it's better to anticipate at least the uncertainty and the unexpected and plan accordingly. That would be better. Over.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your insightful comments for this issue. Okay, I'd like to choose another question from the audience. Here is the question from Ms. Nicole Cole. She is the commissioner from Guyana. The question is, how can digital financial literacy help sustain livelihoods for single female-headed households? I'd like to forward this question to Mohamed Nasiri from UN Women Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. Mr. Nasiri, could you give us your thought on this issue? Mr. Nasiri.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Dr. Kim. There is a saying that you have to have money to make money, which is true. But also it is true that we need to have access to the tools and knowledge on how to grow our money, which is a privilege only very few have. Estimates suggest that 4 out of 10 women globally do not have their bank accounts. In some countries, we have seen that moving to digital finance, like mobile cash, mobile wallets, saves women from making long journeys to the bank to collect their salaries. We also see that it is more personal, and women are more likely to remain in control of their wages, opposed to cash wages, where another family member may control the earnings. Coupled with that is digital literacy, how to spend one's wages, opportunities to capitalize on other initiatives, start one's own business, etc. These are all skills and tools that are available only to a certain group of people, but that could, if invested in, unleash an untapped economic potential. At UN Women, we are, for example, working with the Yedan Foundation to introduce digital wallets in 26 countries, focusing largely on women who are not bankable to facilitate their access to financial services. Such partnerships will be the way for the future, creating platforms that combine public services with private sector, philanthropy, civil society, and most importantly, people. Thank you, Dr. Kim, and back to you.
Suki, you
Sorry
are
again.
muted.
Sorry again. Thank you. Thank you very much for your sharing your thoughts, Mr. Nasiri. Then I'd like to ask Mr. Narayan from Asian Development Bank the same question from Ms. Cole, because this issue is a financial issue as well as a gender issue. The question is, how can digital financial literacy help sustain livelihoods for single female-headed households? Mr. Narayan, could you please share your thoughts with us on this matter?
Yes, thank you very much. I think Mr. Nasiri has already presented well, but I'd just like to note that financial inclusion is becoming a very powerful framework for building financial resilience and reducing vulnerabilities. More inclusive financial systems, they empower individuals, especially vulnerable segments like women-headed households, to save, to borrow, to build assets, and to protect themselves against risk. And that helps build the resilience. Increasingly, what we see is that most of these services are now getting transmitted digitally. They're being delivered either online or through mobile banking. So financial literacy, and especially digital financial literacy, then becomes a very important instrument for being able to effectively access and utilize these services. One of the studies that the ADB did, which covered South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, found that financial literacy tends to increase the propensity of vulnerable households to save and to borrow. And in some segments, it was interesting to see that digital literacy, digital financial literacy, has an even larger impact than financial literacy. And this is probably because some of the vulnerable segments are more likely to rely on digital mechanisms, either because they save time, as Mr. Nasiri was mentioning, or because they save travel. Sometimes travel is often costly and risky, and anything which delivers financial services to your doorstep is much more likely to be picked up by vulnerable households, especially by women. At the same time, I would just like to note that the study also showed that there are gender effects, that the positive effects of digital literacy are higher for males than for females. And this probably points to the persistence of other barriers that also need to be tackled alongside digital literacy for us to really have an impact. So I'll stop there and hand back to you. Thank you, Dr. Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Narayan, for focusing on financial digital literacy issue from the different aspect. Thank you. We have time, so I'd like to choose one more question from the audience. The question is, what strategy is suggested to follow to build the capacity of the local government to mitigate the spread of COVID-19? I'd like to forward this question to Ms. Karma Hamudolji from the Royal Civil Service Commission of Bhutan. Mr. Dolji, could you please share your thoughts with us on this issue?
Thank you, Ms. Kim. In terms of building local government capacities, many things can be done, and we see traditionally and perhaps in most countries that local governments usually have, as compared to those civil servants working at the national government, they tend to have lower levels of capacity. And in the case of Bhutan, because my experience has been only with Bhutan, in the case of Bhutan, what we have been doing is we've been trying to decentralize and give opportunities to local governments to have their own allocated funds and work with what we call, in the case of Bhutan, parent agencies. So we have, for example, the Ministry of Finance, maybe the case of Bhutan is a little bit unique, but I'd like to just explain it. In the case when we have a parent agency like the Ministry of Finance places all accounts and finance personnel across all the local governments. And so they are in charge of the capacity building, so to say. But we also feel that the local governments must drive their own capacity. So in that sense, we would like to give them allocated funds that they can choose what kind of trainings they want to do, but align it to the kind of competency frameworks that we are building for that occupational group. So they have a certain level of decentralized authority, and they choose what kind of trainings, but we wouldn't like them to choose trainings that are completely out of their competency frameworks, because then the trainings might not be so useful. So that is one of the ways that we would like to build capacities of local governments here in Bhutan. perhaps in terms of building the capacities for disasters, these are things that the relevant national agency in all countries, they have usually, in Bhutan, we call it the Department of Disaster Management. They build these frameworks, they ensure that all the various protocols and rules and regulations are placed in place, and local governments can then sign up and work with the Department of Disaster Management in terms of building capacity, resilience, being prepared, and mitigating risks right from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dorji, for sharing the experiences of Bhutan to respond to COVID-19. Then we should wrap up the Q&A session. Even though it was relatively short, I think it was a greatly valuable and productive time for us. Now we have concluded this session, and I'd like to thank our excellent speakers for their presentation and intervention. I also thank our participants for joining us today and for their active participation. Today, we have explored the ways to strengthen regional cooperation and key stakeholder engagement of multiple sectors, including public and private sector, civil society, youth, and vulnerable groups through partnerships. Moreover, we have made efforts to find solutions on developing capacities for recovery and resilience for accelerating the SDG implementation. Oh, sorry. Mr. Ratan, do you want to add something? Okay, you have floor.
It's okay. I just wanted to add to the point which Ms. Dorji was mentioning in terms of the adding capacity for local governments. I think we've seen some very good impact, especially by using digital interventions in especially providing bite-sized learning modules as compared to long learning modules, which are very topical. And we've seen various countries, and I have a fair amount of experience in India as well, where, say, for instance, during a pandemic, how to make sure that the asymmetry of information goes away. And especially for very topical issues which local governments need to deal with, having, as Mrs. Dorji mentioned, in terms of the right content and delivered effectively digitally to them in a very fast and timely manner could also be an interesting strategy to work on for capacity building. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Kim.
Okay, can I go forward? Okay. It is crucial that the multiple sectors are able to come together to learn from each other and share their insights. I hope this session was insightful and you will share this with others who might be interested. The video and outcome report will be published on UNPOG website. It would be appreciated if you can fill out the survey. Thank you again for joining us today and staying longer than you expected. And we hope to see you tomorrow on day 2 of the symposium. Have a nice one and take care. Bye-bye.